Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the previous class, we discussed about, uh, we discussed about accounting cycle. Today, we are going to start international accounting and financial reporting standards. Now, what are international accounting and financial reporting standards? They are the general rules and guidelines determined by international professional bodies regarding accounting record keeping and financial reporting to be followed by all companies, whether these are small companies, medium companies, or large companies, in order to bring consistency and better understanding of accounting information and the financial reports of all the companies around the world. Now, basically, international financial reporting standards are international accounting and financial reporting standards. These are rules, these are standards set by international accounting bodies so that all over the world accounting and financial reporting, it will be the same, standardized. There will be a standardized reports and standardized accounting procedure all over the world. Suppose this is world, this is country A, B, C, a lot. So now you see, you know about international markets. Now companies from one country, they are investing money in other countries. Like we people studied in international business, multinational companies. So this company, they are investing money in other countries. This company is investing money in other countries. So what about the standards? So if there is one standard, so all these companies will follow the same standard all over the world. So international bodies, they develop international standards, and it is mandatory for all companies that they will follow these standards. Keep in mind there are two standards. One is called GAAP and the other is called IFRS. These are two standards followed all over the world. GAAP, it is also called US GAAP because all companies registered in USA, they are following the GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. And IFRS, International Financial Reporting Standards, this is followed in other countries mostly. Now they are trying to combine these two bodies. Since 2002, they are trying to combine IFRS and GAAP. GAAP is generally accepted accounting principles, and IFRS is International Financial Reporting Standards. So here he is telling you about this thing, that they are the general rules and guidelines determined by international professional bodies regarding accounting record keeping, how accounting record will be maintained, and financial reporting, and how we will report these information, like how balance sheet will be prepared, how income statement will be prepared, how cash flow statement will be prepared. to be followed by all companies, and all the companies all over the world, whether these are small companies, medium companies, large companies, they will follow it in order to bring consistency and better understanding of accounting information. So there will be consistency and there will be better understanding of accounting information and financial reports the of all the companies around the world. So all over the world there will be consistency and there will be better understanding of financial information all over the world. These are general rules and concepts that govern the field of accounting and finance. So these are basically rules all over the world regarding accounting and finance. These general rules refer to as basic accounting principles and guidelines. These are basically basic accounting principles and guidelines. How accounting information will be kept, will be maintained all over the world, from the groundwork on which more detailed, complicated, and legislative accounting rules are based. For example, the Financial Accounting Standard Board uses the basic accounting principles and guidelines as a basis for their own detailed and comprehensive set of accounting rules and standards. First, it is an international body, and this international body, they develop a set of rules, and these set of rules regarding accounting, these are followed all over the world. Most common and famous standards are GAAP and IFRS. I told you previously that there are two standards used all over the world. One is called GAAP and one is called IFRS. Now first come to GAAP. GAAP is generally accepted accounting principles, also called GAAP or US GAAP, are the generally accepted accounting principles adopted by US Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, Securities Exchange Commission. So US Securities Exchange Commission, they are following the GAAP or US GAAP. All the companies registered in USA, they must follow the GAAP. While the SEC has stated that it intends to move from US GAAP to the International Financial Reporting Standards. Now, I told you that in 2002, USA, they decide, or the US Security Exchange Commission, they decide that from US GAAP now they will move towards International Financial Reporting Standards. That they will move from US GAAP to International Financial Reporting Standards. The latter differ considerably from GAAP, and progress has been slow and uncertain. Now they are trying since 2002 that both these bodies, to combine both these bodies, the GAAP and IFRS, but the progress on this thing is a bit slow. Maybe after some time you will see that there will be one body, accounting and finance body, all over the world. Generally accepted accounting principles are the common set of accounting principles, standards, and procedures that company must follow when they compile their financial statements. Whenever companies they will make their financial statements, they must follow the GAAP. GAAP is a combination of authoritative standards set by policy boards. These are some authoritative standards and the commonly accepted ways of recording and reporting accounting information and how accounting and financial reports must be prepared. GAAP improves the clarity of communication of financial information. Now, if you will follow GAAP, it will be easy to understand the financial information. Now, the phrase generally accepted accounting principles consists of three important set of rules. There are three basic set of rules. The first one is basic accounting principles and guidelines. The second is the detailed rules and standards issued by Financial Accounting Standard Board and its predecessor, the Accounting Principle Board. Here are detailed rules and standards, and these rules are issued by Financial Accounting Standard Board and Accounting Principles Board. The generally accepted industry practices, and there is a third set of rule that is called the generally accepted industry practices. If a company distributes its financial statements to the public, it is required to follow generally accepted accounting principles in the preparation of those statements. Don't confuse yourself. It is just, GAAP is just a set of rules. All the companies, public limited companies, when they are registering with Securities Exchange Commission, when they will make their financial statements, they must follow generally accepted accounting principles. Further, if a company's stock is publicly traded, federal law requires the company's financial statements to be audited by independent public accountants. And if a company is publicly trading its shares, so it is mandatory by law that at the end of year they must audit their financial statements by an independent public accountant. You know about external audit. So at the end of year, it is law that they must audit their accounting information or financial reports. Both the company's management and the independent accountants must certify that financial statements and the related notes to the financial statements have been prepared in accordance with GAAP. And keep in mind, the management of the company and the independent auditor, both of these parties must follow financial statements when they are making their financial statements and the notes to the financial statements. They must follow the GAAP. It is law that both the management and the auditors, they will follow the GAAP. They will try to make their financial statements according to generally accepted accounting principles. Sorry. Now come to the second standard setting authority, that is International Financial Reporting Standards, are a set of international accounting standards stating how particular type of transactions and other events should be reported in financial statements. This is another standard body. They set standards that how particular types of transactions and events should be reported in financial statements, that how a company must report different type of transactions and events in the financial statements. IFRS are issued by International Accounting Standard Board. Now the standard setting authority of IFRS, it is International Accounting Standard Board, IASB. and they specify exactly how accountants must maintain and report their accounts. And there are rules that how an accountant must report the financial statements. IFRS were established in order to have a common accounting language. And what is the purpose of IFRS? That all over the world there must be a common accounting language. Means all over the world the financial reporting it will be the same. So business and accountants can be understood from company to company and country to country. So all over the world, from company to company and country to country, each and every accountant, he can easily understand the financial reports. Now GAAP versus IFRS, what is the difference? GAAP is focused on the practice of US companies. I told you GAAP is followed by US companies. The Financial Accounting Standard Board issues GAAP. And who made the GAAP? Financial Accounting Standard Board. The international alternative to GAAP is the International Financial Reporting Standards. Now GAAP is followed in USA, in US Securities Exchange Commission. Its alternative in the world, international alternative to GAAP is for International Financial Reporting Standard set by International Accounting Standard Board. And then the alternative of GAAP all over the world, it is International Financial Reporting Standards, and it is issued by International Accounting Standard Board. The IASB and the FASB have been working on the convergence of IFRS and GAAP since 2002. And now these two bodies, they are trying since 2002 to converge, to combine these two rules, these two standards. Due to the progress achieved in the partnership, in this partnership in 2007, the SEC removed the requirement for the non-US companies registered in America to reconcile their financial reports with GAAP if their accounts already compiled with IFRS. Now in 2007, what happened? You know, companies registered in USA, suppose this is USA. So all the companies registered in USA, they will follow GAAP. Which are registered on US Securities Exchange Commission or US Stock Exchange. Now, all the companies, multinational companies, which are from other countries and they are registered on US Stock Exchange, they must follow the GAAP. Suppose there is a company from Afghanistan. Now this company, it is registered on US Stock Exchange, so they must follow GAAP. Outside Afghanistan, outside USA, they will follow IFRS. So what they did in 2007, the US Securities Exchange Commission, they passed a regulation, a rule that those companies, non-US companies, they are allowed that if their financial reports are following IFRS, then there is no need of generally accepted accounting principles. Previously, it was mandatory that GAAP must be followed in US Securities Exchange Commission. But in 2007, they made a change in their regulation that those companies, non-US companies, registered on US stock exchange, they are allowed to use IFRS instead of GAAP. Whether they are following GAAP or IFRS, it is fine. Any one out of them, out of these two. Due to the progress achieved in the partnership in 2007, the SEC removed the requirement for non-US companies registered in America to reconcile their financial reports with GAAP if their accounts are already compiled with IFRS. This was a big achievement because prior to the ruling, non-US companies trading on US exchanges had to provide GAAP compliant financial statements. So previously, the non-US companies, they must follow the GAAP, but in 2007 this standard was changed. Now, what are the basic accounting principles and guidelines? Since GAAP is founded on the basic accounting principles and guidelines, we can better understand GAAP if we understand those accounting principles. Now, these are different principles followed by GAAP. Economic entity assumption, monetary unit assumption, time period assumption, cost principle, full disclosure principle, going concern principle, matching principles, revenues, recognition principles, materiality principle, and conservatism. So these are different rules followed. These are different standards in generally accepted accounting principles. So today what we discussed two things. The first one is GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles, developed by a body that is called FASB, Financial Accounting Standard Board. And this is also called US GAAP because all the companies registered on US stock exchange, they must follow the GAAP. And the second one, which is IFRS, International Financial Reporting Standards, and it is issued by IASB, International Accounting Standard Board. It is used all over the world. Now this is the difference between these two. These are the standards, accounting and finance standards followed in USA. These are accounting and financial reporting standards followed all over the world. But in 2002, they make a partnership that we will try to combine these two. And since 2002, they are working on that. In 2007, then all the non-US companies registered on US stock exchange, it was not mandatory for them to follow GAAP. If their financial statements are according to international financial reporting standards, there is no need to follow the GAAP. So this is the main difference between GAAP and IFRS. There are different standards used in GAAP. Inshallah, in the next class, what are the standards of GAAP? We will study these. So this is the main difference. Don't confuse yourself about these two things. The GAAP and IFRS. GAAP is followed in USA and IFRS is followed all over the world. Now, what is the reason of developing these standards? All the companies all over the world, whether small companies, medium companies, large companies, when they will follow the same standards, so it will be easy for each and every person in the understanding of the financial reports. They can easily understand financial reports. But if in one country we are following one standards, in other country we are following other standards, in the other country we are following other standards, so for the people, for the investors, for the accountants, it will be difficult. It will be difficult to understand the financial statements. Now, you know about this thing that at the end of the year there is an independent audit. It is mandatory by law that all the companies, they will audit their financial statements at the end of the year, and it is the responsibility of the management and responsibility of auditor that they will follow the GAAP and IFRS. They will try to make and present their financial reports, that is an income statement, balance sheet, cash flow, statement of owners equity, either according to GAAP or either according to financial reporting standards. Inshallah, in the next class, then we will talk about the standards, different standards in GAAP. Have a good time.